thanks again for having me, guys. I wanted to today bring to you guys a bunch of the numbers about inflation and a bunch of the other data that goes along with it. So like jobs, the US CPI data, and the funds rate and stuff like that. So bringing that to you guys today. And actually, it's a really good day for me because the inflation data for March in Canada just came out today. Really, really good. It's at 4.3, and 4.3 was expected. And you guys will see in the slide what it was in February. It's almost a % difference month over month, which is really, really like it's obviously a big, aggressive decline. So
what went down? It didn't seem like anything went down.
Gas,
groceries.
Yeah. So but yeah, so obviously there was the Bank of Canada pause last week. I didn't want to speak on too much of the numbers the last time I was up here because a lot of the data that I'm able to share with you today wasn't readily available at the time that I was live. I'm kind of just going to bring it in all into summary here today, and like I said, just present it to you guys. But despite 35,000 new jobs being added into the Canadian economy, the Bank of Canada obviously decided to hold rates. And I can sit up here and tell you guys now with the good inflation numbers that we're seeing today, they're expected to hold throughout the summer, barring any unforeseen circumstances. It doesn't look like another rate increase is going to be on the table. Again, a big asterisk, that is barring any unforeseen circumstances. This is the expectation of the market right now, but of course things can change, right? So the key figures that you guys are going to want to look at, obviously the job numbers, right? So despite jobs being pretty hot, inflation is still being tamed at a pretty good level. And I wanted to throw in the funds rate here. So the funds rate for Bank of Canada, a little bit different than what prime rate is at. Prime rate is set to the Fed funds rate. So Fed funds right now in Canada is 4.5 and prime is 2.25, higher than that, right? So 6.7, sorry, 2.2, yeah, 2.2 higher. And then the US funds rate is a little bit higher. And I had a question the last time that I was up here about the Canadian dollar in comparison to the US dollar. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, right? Obviously, there's a little bit of a difference between our Fed funds rate and what the US is showing. And typically, yes, when there is a little bit of a difference between one country and another, the country that has the higher interest rate is going to see their dollar, be a little bit stronger with the interest rates are a little bit more attractive in terms of the global market. And I'm going to spare you guys the details. It's not a macroeconomic lesson. All you need to know pretty much is because our interest rate is less, our dollar gets valued less relative to the US dollar. What does that mean for us? Well, in terms of inflation, it can make inflation a little bit stickier because now to buy US goods, it makes our dollar less depreciated or less valuable, I guess I could say. But I don't think this is going to be too much of an issue. I don't know how exactly it's going to affect the Canadian dollar in the long term. I'm not an economist, but in terms of inflation, it can definitely make inflation a little bit stickier. One thing to note is that it's not going to be anything that you need to be concerned with in the short term. Again, because there is a difference right now, inflation is a lagging term. So we could see this play out within the next maybe 8 months-ish. But like I said, inflation right now is coming down very, very steeply. So I don't think it's going to be a figure that you guys are going to need to be concerned about. Next, another thing that I want to say is obviously inflation has been declining very, very aggressively now. I haven't put it up in the slides here today because inflation just came out for the month of March this morning around, I think it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock, they released it. So inflation is at 4.3 for the month of March. In February, we were sitting at 5.2. So almost a % drop, like I said. That's very, very good for rates. And in terms of what I can bring to you guys today about what I'm seeing out there in the rate market, is, you know, for your average 30-year fixed, and the one that I've quoted at the bottom here, this is TD. Last year we were sitting at around 5.34. That same rate, TD is now offering 5.14, and that's obviously just a middle ground fixed rate that, you know, that anyone might be able to get. Of course, we could do better than this, we could do worse than this. It's all depending on the client, right? But I just wanted to give you guys an example of how we're actually seeing it in the market and how we're kind of seeing it play out. Of course, yes, inflation coming down is very, very good, but fixed rates aren't necessarily tied to the you know, the prime rate. So I wanted to also bring up bonds, and I'm almost done here. I wanted to bring up bonds here, right? So this part that I have here is the bonds rates from you know, the last, I'd say, year and a bit, from April, yeah, this is from April 2022 to April 2023 now. So this is the bonds rates from the last year. Obviously, you guys can see it if I come up here. Obviously, you guys can see it's kind of flat till about here. The start of 2022, and then it was on a steady increase, right? So looking at this chart, it looks like, you know, the bond yields are on a steady trajectory up. But I wanted to bring it closer in here. So this is the bond yields from just this year, and the same chart, but just zoomed in a little bit more. And as you guys can see, it's relatively flat, especially with our inflation data coming down, you know, quite considerably. It might indicate that rates have plateaued on the bond yields. So, you know, and obviously we've seen a material decrease in rates. So it might suggest that they've plateaued, and I would expect them to come back down, especially with rates coming down a little bit, right? It's not going to be anything, you know, dramatic with the bond yields. The bond yields are very, very a conservative measure, but that's one thing that I'm looking at. And that's about all that I have for you guys today. Just some takeaways. You know, inflation is looking very, very good, and we're still expecting rate cuts, but you know, I wouldn't expect them until, you know, me personally, I would say the start of 2024. Obviously, some people are out there in the market are pricing in rate cuts as early as, you know, the end of this year, December, November. Me personally, I would say the start of 2024. But of course, the inflation numbers that we're seeing today are very, very bullish for rates and good for the housing economy in general. So that's about all I got for you guys today.